Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. got no place to go. Lift your head and call my name, and I'll come running like a freight train. Sometimes people do you wrong, make you feel like a sad song. Lift your head and call my name, 'cause brother, I've been through the same thing. Don't let the darkness get you down. Love will turn your life around. You think you're lost and then you're found. Don't let the darkness get you down. There's a sunrise up ahead. I know you're tired, but you're not dead. There's a fire in your soul. Oh, you're burning brighter than you'll ever know. Don't let the darkness get you down. Love will turn your life around. You think you're lost and then you're found. Don't let the darkness get you down. I will be there. I will be there. Whenever you call me. Whenever you call me. I will be there. I will be there. Don't let the darkness get you down. Love will turn your life around. You think you're lost and then you're found. Don't let the darkness get you down. Don't let the darkness get you down. Love will turn your life around. You think you're lost and then you're found. Don't let the darkness get you down.
Hey guys, I'm Chelsea Foshi, and I'm the Director of Elementary Ministries here at Crosspointe. First off, thank you guys so much for all the donations that were brought in for the Neighbor Up food drive. We really appreciate it. In May, we've got a couple different things going on. May is National Foster Care Month, and this topic is very near and dear to my heart as a foster parent and our family as a foster family. And so last year we were able to, as a church community, gather up and donate tons of backpacks filled with all sorts of goodies. Those backpacks were kept at our Wake County Department of Social Services building, and then kids, as they came in and needed to stay a night or a few nights at that building, were able to use those. So thank you guys so much. That was a huge, my social worker in particular, was just incredibly grateful for all of those items that were donated. This year, we are doing something similar, and we would love to just fill that closet up with stuffed animals and blankets. Quite often, there are not enough foster families to be able to take in kids that, different calls that are coming in. And so in those instances, the kiddos do have to be brought to this building and spend a night or 2 nights there while social workers figure out where to place them. And so these stuffed animals and blankets will directly be used. They will travel with that child for who knows, however long they keep it the rest of their lives, and will hopefully provide a little bit of comfort in a tough time. So we do only ask for new items. So take your kiddos shopping. This is a great way to serve our community as a family. Pick it out on Amazon, have it delivered, and bring that any Sunday morning between now and May 31st. And we just thank you guys so much. We personally have felt just a lot of love and surrounding whenever we have a new kiddo come to our home, whether it's just for a day or for a couple days or for many months. And so this is just a great way you can support kids coming into foster care and even those families as well. Something else that is coming up is just in a little over a week, we've got our Family Promise Host Week. And so Crosspointe members will be able to provide meals to families experiencing homelessness and living in temporary housing over at the Family Promise building in the Triangle. And so this is a great opportunity for individuals, families, or groups to get involved. Some people decide to pitch in and order a meal, while other people want to cook together and deliver the meals themselves. So this week, we will also be providing a grocery store gift card for each family. If you need suggestions or have questions, don't hesitate to contact us. There are much more details on our website, and you can sign up there. But this is, again, a great way to serve people in our community. And that website is crosspointe.org/familypromise. So go over there, check that out. Anything is helpful. And lastly, a way to serve our community right here, our own Crosspointe community. We have summer dinner club starting up very soon, and we need some more summer dinner club hosts. As the host, you can determine the location, the frequency, the time. You essentially get to be the one in charge of figuring out what works best for you and your family, and then others will be invited in to join you guys for Summer Dinner Club. I know personally, again, my parents joined one last year, and their group just still happens to be meeting, and they just have become so close over this last year, and my parents will tell us funny stories about what they've been talking about or what they've been eating, and so I've seen them be impacted by this, and it is just a really fun way to get to know different people in our community too. So be sure to sign up at the QR code on the slide up there around us. And thank you guys so much just for all the ways that you support our community. As always, there are a multitude ways that you can do this. Check out our website to see how. Thank you guys. I hope you have a great Sunday.
Good morning, Crosspointe. I want to start with a reading today from the book of Acts. Stephen, full of grace and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. Then some of those who belonged to the synagogue of the freedmen, as it was called, Cyrenians, Alexandrians, and others from Cilicia and Asia, stood up and argued with Stephen. But they could not withstand the wisdom and the spirit with which he spoke. Then they secretly instigated some men to say, "We've heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and God." And they stirred up the people as well as the elders and the scribes. And then suddenly they confronted him, they seized him, they brought him before the council. Then the high priests asked him, "Are these things so?" And Stephen replied, "You stiff-necked people, your hearts and ears are still uncircumcised. You're just like your ancestors. You always resist the Holy Spirit. Was there ever a prophet your ancestors did not persecute? They even killed those who predicted the coming of the righteous one. And now you have betrayed and murdered him. You who have received the law that was given through angels but have not obeyed it." Then, when the members of the Sanhedrin heard this, they were furious and gnashed their teeth at him. But Stephen, full of the Holy Spirit, looked up to heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God and said, "Look," he said, I see heaven open and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." And at this, they covered their ears, and yelling at the top of their voices, they all rushed at him. They dragged him out of the city and began to stone him. Meanwhile, the witnesses laid their coats at the feet of a young man named Saul. And while they were stoning him, Stephen prayed, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit." Then he fell on his knees and cried out, "Lord, do not hold this sin against them." And when he said this, he fell asleep. And Saul approved of their killing him. So I don't particularly care for this story because portions of it are brutal and violent and really sad. But it is one of the suggested readings from the lectionary today, which seems odd to me as we're still in Easter season or Eastertide, as we talked about briefly a few weeks ago. I'd rather be talking about new life and spring and flowers and bunnies and hope. And this passage is very much not those things. There's enough violence and despair in the world. I'd prefer not to hear it or think about it or talk about it. And in full disclosure, since we're a non-denominational congregation and not tied to the liturgy, no one told me I had to use this passage. I could have brought literally any other text for us to discuss today. But there was something about this particular passage that caught and kept my attention. It wasn't the slow, excruciating murder of Stephen, the young man who became the first recognized martyr of the Christian church. It wasn't Saul, we know him later as Paul's, approval and encouragement of the heinous act while he stood by and allowed the system to do his dirty work. What caught my attention was the crowd's response to being presented with a message they didn't care for by a person they didn't like. Stephen said things they would have preferred not to hear, or think about, or talk about. And the reaction was a primal, toddler-like one. So back in the early days of the Christian church, when this is taking place, the Greek or Hellenistic Jewish Christians and the Hebrew Jewish Christians were trying to figure out how to organize themselves and work together. It was difficult, and actually it ultimately didn't work out. But at this time, they were still trying. But a disagreement arose. Money and goods had been collected to feed the widows and the poor, and the Hellenists felt that they weren't being evenly distributed, and that their widows were being discriminated against and not being given their fair share. So the disciples, like Jesus' disciples, they were ultimately in charge, and they decided they didn't have time to deal with that, what with everything else they had going on. So they appointed 7 diaconesses, or deacons, or servants, to oversee the project. And Stephen was one of those deacons. Stephen's main job was service. He was making sure the widows were taken care of, that the poor got fed. But apparently, he had some evangelistic aspirations as well, because everywhere he went, he spoke loudly and passionately about Jesus, maybe like one of those street preachers that stands up on a box with signs and a microphone. I mean, it was Jesus that had put him on his career path as a servant to the poor and the widows in the first place. He wanted everybody to know about it. Well, evidently, Stephen also had preacher aspirations, because one of the very few things we know about him is that he gave the longest sermon in the entire book of Acts. But it was his proclivity to call things as he saw them and offer truth without grace that made him a lot of enemies and ultimately led to his career being a really short one. At one point, much like what happened to Jesus, which isn't a mistake, the Jewish leaders had enough of him, and they accused Stephen of blasphemy. They took him before the council, and they got false witnesses to testify that Stephen's message was contrary to Jewish law, which was a crime. And Stephen's defense turned out to be the 51-verse sermon, his 15 minutes of fame. He spent the majority of his diatribe. We only read just a tiny portion of it. He spent most of it accusing the Jewish people of centuries of ongoing disobedience and betrayal. He accused them of murdering not only Jesus, but also prophets of the past, including the very important and revered Moses. And parts of Stephen's sermon have been used over the years to support anti-Semitism. Although this wasn't Stephen's original intent, he himself was Jewish. Stephen also insulted a huge pillar of Jewish faith, heritage, and pride. The temple. Claimed God didn't need to be worshipped in a specific place because God lived everywhere. And he went on to say that worshiping God in the temple was actually idolatry, which is against one of the 10 Commandments. He said it's what pagans did. You're acting like pagans. He said it was proof that the Jewish people were rejecting God. And he just didn't let up. Now, Stephen wasn't totally wrong. He was technically right about the ramifications of past actions and disobedience, about their killing past prophets, and about God not being confined to a specific place. Some of his historical details weren't quite accurate, but the leaders didn't care about that. His main message was insulting enough to be the focus of their outrage. And what he had in passion, Stephen lacked in tact. And he ended up with his speech calling his accusers names: uncircumcised and stiff-necked. Uncircumcised meaning unclean, not really the people of God. And stiff-necked meaning so obstinate and stubborn they couldn't turn their heads right or left to see anything but was right in front of them. And this Greek word stiff-necked is where we get our word sclerosis from, as in multiple sclerosis, the disease, which is the unnatural hardening of tissue in the body that prevents movement and slowly deteriorates the body. Well, As you can probably imagine, they didn't take this well. And after they felt they had listened long enough, they decided the whippersnapper needed to be put in his place. Enough was enough. They didn't want to hear it, or think about it, or talk about it anymore. And the writer says that the group became so incensed that they started acting like animals, gnashing their teeth. It reminds me of a dog. Stephen didn't notice, or he didn't care. He just kept going. And he described that he was having a vision of God. Maybe this was his life flashing before his eyes. But that made the crowd even madder, because how could such a criminal and a blasphemer be seeing the divine? That meant either they were wrong about the whole situation, or it made Stephen more of a liar. It didn't matter. They had already determined that whatever he said or did was wrong. So they put their hands over their ears and they shouted as loud as they could, la 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 la, so they wouldn't have to hear it or think about it or talk about it anymore. And then the mob mentality took over. There was no judge or jury, no group vote, just a collective anger that made them do something they likely would never have done on their own. The group collective, animalistic toddler action, not individual consciousness. So they collectively stoned a man to death. And while stoning was considered an acceptable form of punishment during that time, it didn't mean it was humanitarian, and it definitely wasn't quick. Multiple steps were necessary to complete the task. Picking up a stone, throwing it, would have required taking fingers out of the ears, bending over, choosing a stone, throwing it, and then doing it over and over again as you watched a fellow human be literally torn apart and listening to their agonizing cries of pain. Excuse me. It would have taken a while. There would have been ample time for reconsideration. But at that point, they'd so othered Stephen that he was no longer human in their eyes. He'd been reduced to an issue. And in a strange twist, their actions actually fulfilled what Stephen had accused them of: persecution, betrayal, murder. And they lived up to the name he'd called them, because they would have had to have been stiff-necked to finish the job. It seems like Stephen had seen what was coming. Maybe his mom had warned him that his mouth would get him into trouble one day. Maybe he recalled the plights of the prophets he'd just been preaching about, and that few, if any of them, had had happy endings. I imagine so many things were going through his mind. But even so, his final act was one of protest. He took a knee, and he begged the God he was preaching about not to hold the mob's actions against the individuals. It's no accident that Luke, the author, made Stephen's last words echo the final words of Jesus on the cross, when Stephen advocated for forgiveness and he protested against their condemnation. We are still stoning prophets, aren't we? Individuals who dare to stand up and speak out have always been at risk of stoning. Our modern prophets who risk themselves to speak truth to power. Evangelical Christians refused to support Martin Luther King Jr. They told him to back off. They said disparaging things about him. War protesters and ICE protesters, LGBTQ protesters, women's rights activists, teachers who peacefully dare to call out abuses are arrested, spoken badly about. Sometimes their careers are tarnished. Sometimes they are even killed. You may remember not that long ago, NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, joined by his teammate Eric Reed, took a knee to protest during the playing of the national anthem. He was protesting police brutality and the treatment of Black and brown Americans in the United States. And even though they'd been advised by former NFL player and former Green Beret Nate Boyer to take a knee because it was more respectful than sitting, the result was Kaepernick's verbal stoning and the ultimate death of his NFL career. Now, ultimately, the gesture spread around the world as a sign of peaceful protest against violence and racism. We could go on. But what bothers me more than that is that most of the time, I see myself more in the crowd than in Stephen. I'm stiff-necked, especially when I'm presented with something I don't like, something I don't want to hear, think about, or talk about. When the messenger is on the other team, I am 100% less likely to listen and 100% more likely to think that they are less than me. When someone from the other side presents me with something I don't like, whether it's online or in person, I have a tendency to immediately put my fingers in my ears, to become dismissive or stone the messenger. Well, not actually, I've never stoned anyone. But the messenger ceases to become human, to be human, and they become an issue. And my algorithms create a virtual siloed mob that backs me up, that fuels the flame, that turns my disgust and anger righteous. I love the quote by author Anne Lamott. She says, "You can safely assume you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do." How easy and delicious it is to stone the prophet, to ignore the humanity, to ignore the image of God looking back at me. How intoxicating to use them as an excuse to gnash my teeth and shout and plug my ears and not hear them, not think about them, not talk to them. It's kind of a classic case of don't kill the messenger, which has always been a problem. Until the invention of modern technology communication, even the most difficult places was mostly delivered via people. There was a time that being a messenger was an incredibly dangerous job, not just because it meant walking into active war zones or traveling to dangerous or out-of-the-way places, but because it wasn't uncommon for the messenger to be harmed or killed by the recipient if the news was bad. Written and unwritten rules were eventually created to protect messengers and town criers, both from their messages and as they traveled in and out of the battlefield. They were not allowed to be harmed. The messenger is not the message. And I understand that everyone in the world is not a prophet, nor should they be considered one, but we all carry our messages. We do not agree these days. This is not new, and it's okay. It's also right and okay to call out the abuser, the liar, the exploiter, the violent, especially when they are creating and perpetuating the systems of violence and brutality. It is right to work to fairly feed the widow and the poor. It is okay and right to actively work against systems of oppression and injustice. That's prophetic work. But most of the people we interact with in person or online are just that, people, without nefarious purposes. They're repeating the messages their mob gave them. Most messengers did not create the messages, they just repeat them. And messengers are never just messengers. We are, none of us, just one thing. You're not just a Crosspointe listener or attender. I'm not just a pastor. I'm a parent and a friend and a spouse. In just the past couple of days, I've gone to 3 lacrosse games, helped my daughters get ready for the prom, walked my dog, went out to eat with my spouse, cleaned out the litter box, taken out the tracks, fixed like 9 meals, gone to a grocery store, watched a horrible movie with my teen, done an obscene amount of laundry, read half a chapter of a novel, and that's just a few of the things. And I'm sure your list is just as long. None of us are only one thing. Within us, as Walt Whitman said, we contain multitudes. None of us can be or should be reduced to just our messages, no matter how much I may not want to hear yours. And this is what Stephen understood about the individuals in the crowd. We are all of us, bigger than our worst selves. We are all larger stories. Reverend Renee August is a South African Anglican priest. She's a veteran anti-apartheid activist. And she says about herself that she hates conflict enough to get involved in conflict transformation, and she hates injustice enough to bring about as much justice as possible, which I love that definition or that description of her. But her position puts her in a lot of spaces where people don't agree, where messengers and prophets have literally been killed, where forgiveness has been hard to offer and hard to receive. But Reverend August encourages creating bigger spaces, creating bigger stories for ourselves and for others. She calls us multiverses. We all suffer from both superiority and inferiority complexes. We make good and bad choices, and we all bear the image of God. We co-create goodness in the world, even if we don't do it well all the time. We are living contradictions, which isn't shameful, it's just human. But when we recognize this in ourselves, we can recognize it in others. When we allow ourselves to be a bigger, not yet finished story, we can take our fingers out of our ears and allow others a bigger story too. We must. So back in October, as in October 2025, a team of Stanford University researchers did a study on empathy. They worked with more than 5,000 students. They came away with some really interesting findings. They discovered that the more students viewed others as empathetic, the more socially connected they felt. Researchers uncovered this empathy perception gap, basically meaning that students consistently viewed their peers as less empathetic than themselves. In other words, they felt that they were kind of on a higher understanding level than everybody else around them. They invariably underestimated how much the people around them cared. And this belief caused them to withdraw and to be less likely to socially interact, which fueled the cycle because there was nothing to counter their own conclusions. So the researchers set about to change misconceptions in several ways. And one of the projects was a campaign where they put empathy fact posters up in dorms where students would see them. And the posters said things like, 95% of Stanford students are likely to help others when they're feeling down, or 85% of Stanford students enjoy meeting and becoming friends with students they don't know. Well, the results were that the students who lived in the dorms that saw the posters, they began to view their peers as more empathetic, which meant that they also started to participate in what psychologists call social risk behaviors. And those are things like striking up a conversation with someone they didn't know, or sharing their struggles with another student. Well, another thing researchers did was create a phone app that gave a series of prompts. Participants were prompted to do things like compliment a stranger or reach out to a friend they hadn't connected with in a while. And the research showed that students who received the prompts were more likely to perceive their peers as caring, and after 3 weeks, they were nearly 90% more likely to step out of their comfort zone and reach out to others. The app encouraged empathy. It encouraged them to humanize their peers, to give them a larger story than the one they had created about them. Psychology research has consistently shown that the more we come in contact with people who are unlike us, the more we are able to be empathetic towards them, the less we feel threatened by them. This isn't new science. We talk about it often. But taking our fingers out of our ears, opening our eyes, gives us the ability to and encourages us to cultivate a deep curiosity, to turn from our silos outward and become curious about others, to ask questions and think of people as multifaceted rather than just an issue. There's a silly video that I love that offers a visual of what I'm talking about. I want to watch it just for a second.
Good morning, Birmingham. It's a beautiful day to be 60 to 78 years young. Here's another golden oldie.
Your phone charge is on.
Your phone charge is on.
Have a house.
Lovely.
Your phone torch is on.
Oh, careful, Seymour.
Watch out for the generation gap.
I wonder how they're going over there.
Ah, bloody Gen Zs. Just remember, we're the ones that invented your precious World Wide Web.
Oh, Seymour.
Ugh, classic boomers, making the gap bigger. They'd understand if they just listened to us.
Yeah, season 1 was better.
Hey, do you think all this screen time is adversely affecting our social skills?
Well, it could be worse. We could be in our early 30s.
Hey, millennials are still cool, right?
So not slay.
Are we saying slay now? Slay. Slay. Slay.
I just feel like no one pays attention to Gen X. We've got so much to...
I don't care what they do, just not in my backyard. Hey, my backyard! This is their fault.
Don't look at us. We're literally perfect.
Typical young people. Everyone gets a trophy.
We were kids. You bought us the trophy.
Stop gaslighting us.
That's not what that means. Cancel. Cancel.
Is that lamb?
Lamb.
You know, when I was a kid, we'd have lamb.
Lamb barbecue? Lit.
Well, at least we can agree on something.
The generation gap, it's closing.
The lamb's getting closer.
I'm addicted to my phone as well.
Takeaway coffees could be hotter.
It's okay you spent $368 billion on submarines.
It was an impulse buy.
Being a young person in Australia must be difficult.
Being an old person must be pretty tricky too. Probably.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's a barbecue for the ages.
Who's that?
Oh, it's John Howard. Oh, who's that?
Good to have the country back together.
We weren't ever that far apart, sweetheart.
So I can't tell you how many times I've watched this video. It makes me laugh every time. But apparently the entire country of Australia has bridged all the gaps due to lamb. So it's technically about the generation gap, but it is really about all of us. Because when we're reminded of the humanity of others, we are better able to open our eyes, to take our fingers out of our ears and have a little empathy. We're able to realize that none of us are just the one thing. We are all of us multitudes. I am guilty of shutting my eyes and putting my fingers in my ears, of gnashing my teeth before asking questions. But this is what causes us and is causing us to destroy one another. There's no question that we are more polarized than ever. We don't have to agree or condone, but we can remember that we are, all of us, so much bigger than just the messages. I want to do a quick exercise before we close. I want you to close your eyes and imagine someone that you have a problem with or that you really don't like. Now imagine all the things that they are besides what you don't like about them. Are they a friend, a spouse, a runner, a baker? Take a moment and imagine them being human. I want you to imagine something that you might have in common with them. Now, I want you to offer them a blessing in your mind. Something as simple as, you are beautiful and you are loved. The more we do this, the more we're able to bring humanity back to those that we don't want to hear, that we don't want to talk about, that we don't want to engage with. I want to close this with a blessing. Holy One, loving One, we are grateful for your creativity that made us all unique, multifaceted beings. Give us strength to embrace our own larger stories without shame or guilt. Give us courage to cultivate curiosity about those who are unlike us. Give us hearts and minds full of love and empathy, and remind us that every one of us is bigger and more beautiful than just one thing. Amen. Have a great week.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspoint.org/care. And welcome home.